Hey, 8th graders. Now I'm going to go over our notes that we took in class about plate tectonics. This was about Wagner, seafloor spreading, and subduction and how all of that matches together. So our guiding question for this lesson was, what is the evidence for plate tectonics? Remember, we have to do the Cornell notes. Yes, I know it's extra work, but we can use these questions here to help quiz yourself when we do have a test coming up. So the first question is, who is Alfred Wegener? He is a German scientist, and he's the one who came up with the idea that all continents were one big supercontinent. And he named that thing Pangea. This means all life. And he thought that this was a supercontinent 200 million years ago, and since then, all of the continents have drifted apart over time to where they are today. So he's the one who came up with this big idea. Everyone thought that he was crazy, and they didn't believe him because that's how all science starts, just a random idea, and then later on we find out that, oh, maybe this crazy guy was right. So he had evidence for why he thought that this was a thing. And the first one is fossils. He saw that different fossils for different types of organisms matched up on the different continents. And if you piece those together, then you could see that the whole area that fossil or that organism lived during its life, and that is only possible is if those continents were together. The society thought that maybe the organisms had walked across a land bridge and went to the other side, but that is highly impossible because it needed to be exactly in the right spot for those to match up on the different continents. The second one is climate change, and this isn't the same climate change that we talk about today, about how we are destroying the earth and the temperatures are all crazy because we just use so many fossil fuels. This is not the idea that Wegener thought. He saw that there were tropical plant fossils and animal fossils on Antarctica, which is now clearly in a cold climate. It's in the south part of the earth. So he found tropical fossils in cold areas. So he could tell that at one time, Antarctica used to be in the tropics, and maybe it was closer to the equator than what it is now because it's on the south side of our Earth. And then the third one is land features. He saw that mountains and coal ranges, so the coal deposits through time, matched up on different continents. And that's the same idea as the fossils. They matched up on different continents if you piece them together like a puzzle. Okay, our third question is, why was Wegener wrong? Why didn't people believe him? And the reason why they wouldn't believe him is because he couldn't prove how the continents actually moved. He had evidence that they were once together, but he didn't know the mechanism or how that actually happened. So then there was this guy called Harry Hess, who I haven't spent that much time talking about, but he, 50 years later, worked in the Navy, and he was using sonar to map the ocean floor. So sonar, again, is when I have a boat, and I'm sending sound waves down to the bottom of the ocean, and then they bounce back to me, and I can see the geography, how far down the thing is. If there are rocks here, sometimes we can use that to see if there are fish down there, but he was just looking at the floor. So he mapped the whole floor, and he saw that there was something weird about it. So he found, number 4 is, what was his evidence for the seafloor spreading? And he found that ocean floors are shallower in the middle of the ocean, and the mid-ocean ridges were raised above. So he saw, so let's say that we have 2 continents here, and this is the ocean. He saw that it was shallower here, and then it was raised in the middle. And he thought that that had to do something with how the continents had moved over time. And then he also saw that the deepest part of the ocean is close to the continent margins. So the continent margins is the deepest part. And we know now that that is the deep ocean trench. That's the deepest part of the ocean, and the mid-ocean ridge is the tallest part because it's actually a mountain range. in the middle of the ocean where that seafloor spreading is happening. Okay, so the next question is, what is a mid-ocean ridge? And I sometimes write that as MOR. And this is a structure, which I didn't have here to begin with. This is the structure. It's an underwater mountain range where new ocean floor is made. And we know that this is a process. The process is seafloor spreading, and the structure that it creates is the mid-ocean ridge. And I'm going to just draw a little picture. Oops. Just draw a little picture here. So if I have the ocean, we know it's made out of plates. We know that this is raised. This is a mountain range. We know that these are moving away from each other. The process is the spreading, seafloor spreading, and it's making this mid-ocean ridge as it's going. So the actual structure, the thing that is made, that's left over from the process, is the mid-ocean ridge. Okay, and then we have some evidence for seafloor spreading. We can tell that this is a thing because there are pillow-shaped rocks underwater. And they can only form like that when they are made underwater. So they look very pillowy. I'm sure you could Google a picture of that if you're wondering what pillow-shaped rocks look like. The next one is drilling samples. They actually drilled down and collected rocks. And they saw that the further they got away, they had older rocks. So the ones here are young, and the ones here are old. So young, old, old. And the last reason they saw, number 3, is magnetic strips, or stripes. Iron in rock stripes the ocean floor, match the pole reversals in the Earth's geologic history. So over time, we know that our magnetic field has switched from north to south to north. And we could tell that in the rocks when we are drilling samples all the way down. So we can tell that it's changed over time. These have clearly been moving. These are older and these are younger. Last page. What is a deep ocean trench? I've been writing this sometimes as DOT. And this is the deep valley. It's a trench. It's a valley. It's totally opposite than a ridge. So a valley goes down, and then the mid-ocean ridge is a ridge. It's a mountain. Okay, so they're complete opposite, just structures in general. And this happens during the process of subduction. So now we have two processes, and two structures that they make during that process. So as our crust is moving away from our ridge, it doesn't just keep cycling around the Earth. We can tell that it actually subducts, and we'll say that this is a continent. Say this is South America. It actually subducts underneath there because it's more dense. So the process of the subduction is what creates that valley. So first I want to talk about the structures and the processes of deep ocean trench and subduction compared to seafloor spreading and mid-ocean ridge, and then I'll draw a picture and wrap this whole thing up with hopefully a better understanding of what these two are. So let's start with the structure, and then I'll put the processes over here. Processes. Okay, so let's do purple. Alright, so the structure is a mid-ocean ridge. And a mid-ocean ridge only is created because of the process of seafloor spreading. seafloor spreading. So we wouldn't have this structure, this ridge, this mountain range, unless we had the two oceanic crusts moving away from each other. So I've been drawing it like this. We have an oceanic crust and an oceanic crust. They're moving away from each other, and we now know that this means divergent. And when they move away, they create a mountain range. And that's called the mid-ocean ridge. It's mountain range. It's in the middle of the ocean, mid-ocean ridge. And you're just going to have to memorize that these two go together and understand, like think about with the graham crackers, when we pushed down and pushed it further away and moved them away, we created a ridge there and it kind of came up between, and that was the mid-ocean ridge. Okay? And the second structure is the deep ocean trench. This is the complete opposite from a ridge. It's a trench. It's a valley. And we only have a trench because of subduction, the process of subduction. Subduction wouldn't happen unless these were moving away from each other. They needed somewhere to go. They're not just going to keep traveling around the earth, because something's going to be more or less dense, and then something's going to have to float, and something's going to have to sink. So we only have subduction because we have seafloor spreading. They're all connected, but you need to know the difference between the structure and the process. Okay, so let's take this one right here. I'm going to extend that, and once it gets to a continent, I gotta erase that. Whoops. I need to erase you. Alright, we'll go the other way. This one is going that way, and this is the continent. So subduction always has to do with a continental crust and an oceanic crust. The oceanic crust is more dense, so it sinks. The continental crust is least dense, so it floats on top. So when this comes down, right here, this right here is a deep ocean trench. It's a valley. It's the deepest part of the ocean. I'll draw that here. Deep ocean trench. So we only have a trench because this one's going down. It's the deepest part of the ocean because it's going super, super deep. And then up here we have the mid-ocean ridge, and we only have a mid-ocean ridge because these are separating. Alright. So let's start from our mid-ocean ridge. Mid-ocean ridge. We know that these are oceanic. I'm just going to write O. They're moving away. They're diverging. It's a divergent boundary. And as they are moving away, this is definitely here going to be young. And as it moves away, it's getting older and older as it gets further and further away. And that's one thing